Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Let people log in. Please come on in. Welcome. Uh, if you are just logging in, I'd love to hear from you on where you're located. Share with us your location in the chat box. Love to hear from you.
Yeah, that's a good test. Welcome, everyone. That's a good test to see if our audio and video are coming across just right to you.
Yes. Very good. People are starting to come in and just get settled in. We'll get started in just a moment. Hope you're all doing well. My name is Bobby Chung, and I'm going to be your host and presenter today. Hello, Branislav from Serbia. Welcome. Inayat, hi. Marcus, my friend Marcus, welcome. Oh my goodness, Alfonso.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar.
Here we go. Awesome. So let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending our webinar on the challenges and opportunities for E2 investors in the era of COVID-19. Our goal today is to help you see the opportunities in the coming months and try to allay some of the fears and concerns presented by COVID-19. I'm here with my colleague and good friend, Daniel Purim, franchise consultant from Franchise Wizard. Daniel is a consultant that specializes in helping E2 investors finding qualifying businesses for the E2 visa. And my name is Bobby Chung. I'm an immigration attorney, and I focus my law practice on helping E2 investors for over the last 20 years. Now, I'm going to get started with sharing with you some of the current situations with our government regarding how it's affecting the E2 visa, as well as some of the top challenges that E2 investors and prospective E2 investors are facing in the current coronavirus environment and with the government shutdowns and the visa expirations. And then I will transition into sharing with you some 5 to 6 top opportunities I predict that will be available to you in the coming months. And I want you to anticipate these opportunities, maybe start preparing yourself to take advantage of them so that they don't pass you by and miss out on them. And then we're going to transition to my friend Daniel's presentation, and he's going to share with you how the franchise industry is responding to COVID-19, how franchisors are supporting their franchisees and prospective franchisees, and how they're handling and managing that situation, as well as Daniel will share with you some of recession-resistant industries that would be ideal for you to consider in the coming months in your investment decisions. All right, so I'm going to begin my PowerPoint slide. Alrighty, so we're going to talk about what's going on with E2 investors and prospective E2 investors and how the COVID situation is affecting travel abilities and people who are here on the E2 visa, the negative effects on the businesses and the negative effects, any effects on the ability to renew E2 visas, as well as the stimulus program,
Bobby,
the SBA program. Yes.
Have you started sharing the presentation? It's not coming across.
Oh, thank you for that reminder.
All right.
There we go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. So talking about how the current situation affecting E2 businesses that are maybe closed or having a massive slowdown in sales or having to lay off some worker because of it. And then we're going to talk about the future outlook, some of the actions that you can take to prepare yourself to thrive when COVID-19 eventually will end. And I'm very optimistic that the situation will end eventually. This is not the first time that the human race has dealt with a pandemic. And it's sometimes difficult to see the future, to be optimistic when we're in the eye of the storm. But I'm going to share with you and what I see as the opportunities so that we can get out of survival mode and get into thrive mode. Okay, so some of the top questions that I've been getting, as you can see on your screen, is should I travel? Well, right now it's really not very safe to travel. So the actions that you should be taking are more planning for your investment, and whatever actions you can take virtually through video meetings, telephone meetings, research, consulting, lawyers, CPAs, franchise consultants. That's what you should be doing. Traveling is not a good idea right now, but you can position yourself to be ready to travel in the near when all the travel restrictions are lifted. Now, a lot of folks are currently in the United States and they are here on a visitor's visa or ESTA visa waiver, and it's about to expire. What do you do if there are travel restrictions? Well, U.S. immigration allows you to apply for an extension for legitimate purposes. Now, if you're stuck because of travel restrictions or health issues or airline cancellations, those can be all very legitimate reasons for requesting an extension. If you're here as a visitor, you can request up to a 6 months extension of stay. Okay, whether to wait out the COVID storm or to buy more time. Some people are here and they're in the middle of investment or in the middle of business setup, and because of COVID, everything is postponed or delayed, and you can request an extension to give you more time to complete your business setup or investment. There are folks here on ESTA visa waiver. That's the 90-day authorized stay for people coming in here without a visa. Normally, you're not allowed to apply for extension, but recently U.S. immigration has allowed up to 30 days emergency extension of ESTA visa waiver for 3 particular reasons. One is if your air travel has been canceled, and that's something beyond your control. Number 2 is if you're dealing with, if you're sick or you're dealing with health issues. Number 3 is if you're showing symptoms that would make it unsafe for you to travel. So ESTA visa waiver travelers will be able to reach out to U.S. Customs and request up to 30-day extension of stay. Now, a lot of folks are already here on E2 visa running their business, and some people were required to shut down their business because of local government orders, shelter in place, stay-at-home orders. How is this going to affect their visa renewal? Well, when you apply for your visa renewal, obviously U.S. immigration will be looking at how well the business has performed. Now, luckily, I've been practicing law for long enough where I actually experienced the 2008-2009 Great Recession. And from my experience during that period of time, the government immigration officer typically will apply a reasonable approach, meaning that if you're showing a significant downturn or layoffs during an economic event that's way beyond your control, they'll usually excuse that, in my experience. They'll look at other things like how well was your business performing before the traumatic event, and how is your business recovering after the event. So based on my experience, I was able to get nearly 100% of my E2 visas renewed during the 2008-2009 economic recession. So I anticipate the government will treat the COVID crisis the same for people who are renewing their E2 visa in the future. If your business fundamentals are good and you are recovering after COVID, then they will likely be very understanding and give you a chance with a renewal to prove your future business viability. Now, some of you may know this, some of you may not know, but the U.S. embassies worldwide currently have suspended most visa processing temporarily because of COVID-19. because it's not safe to conduct visa interviews. So for folks whose E2 visas are expiring or have expired and here on I-94 authorized stay, right now, the U.S. Embassy, although they're not conducting interviews, but the most embassies that I'm dealing with the E2 visa, they're still accepting E2 visa applications. So you can definitely still submit your E2 application based on my experience, but they're not going to be reviewing it or conducting scheduling interview until it is safe to do so. Now, why am I recommending folks to apply for E2 visa renewal right now, even though the embassy have temporarily suspended the visa processing? The reason is this: I'm expecting that there's going to be a buildup of cases at the U.S. embassies, a backlog of cases from the cases that were pending when COVID first started, and from people who are applying and people who are waiting to apply as soon as the embassies resume their operations. So my strategy is, or my recommendation is, submit your application as soon as possible. And that way you maximize your chances of getting your case as close to the front of the line as possible when the embassies resume their operation. In the past, most embassies would take a month or two, sometimes up to 3 months to process E2 visas, depending on their workload or how busy they are. But I anticipate that processing time could be prolonged because of that backlog of cases. Okay. Now, as I alluded to earlier, what happens if your business is required to shut down because of stay-at-home or shelter-at-home orders, or you have employee layoff or massive sales decline or complete stoppage of revenue generation? How is that going to affect the future? Like I said, it's going to be, I think, immigration officer, based on my years of experience, will take a reasonable approach to that situation and not penalize you for circumstances beyond your control. A lot of folks have asked me about the recent stimulus relief called the CARES Act, which provides SBA loans to small business owners, and which applies to most E2 investors. And the two top programs are the Paycheck Protection Loan Program and the Economic Disaster Loans. Okay, so if you can qualify for these loans, I don't have any problems with you applying for these loans, because we're in extraordinary times. Now, under normal immigration law prohibits immigrants or foreign citizens to be a risk of a financial burden to the US government. And if there's a risk of that, they call that public charge. If you're a risk of public charge, then that could disqualify you from a visa. So normally, under normal times, it would not be a good idea to take any kind of government grants or government benefits. But because we're under unprecedented times, I believe that the US government's priority is to save businesses, save jobs. And your current situation is completely not your fault and completely beyond your control. And if you're taking of the SBA loans would help save your business and save your American workers' jobs, I don't think immigration will penalize you for taking these, benefiting from these reliefs. As long as once this COVID pandemic abates, it subsides, and life starts to get back to normal, and your business start to resume. If there's any loans, you're on track to repaying that loan and getting back into strong financial position with your company. And hopefully by the time you apply for E2 visa renewal, your business will be in a solid financial situation, and your previous usage of the SBA loans under the CARES Act, I don't think that will work to your detriment. Of course, nobody can be certain, right? We're predicting the future, but based on my years' experience and how the government has behaved 10 years ago during the Great Economic Recession, I believe that they're not going to penalize people from using these benefits during extraordinary times. Now, what happens if the worst case scenario happens where you're forced to close your business for good? It's just not sustainable and you have to shut it down, or you have to drastically change your business model. Now, the E2 visa authorizes you to operate the business that you presented in the E2 application, and it expects you to continuously operate that business to maintain your E2 visa. So obviously, if you close a business or you massively change the business model, that could affect the validity of your E2 visa. Now, if you shut down your business, but your E2 visa is still valid, you still have time on your I-94 authorized stay, the law says you have 60 days grace period. With a closed business, you have 60-day grace period to either make a new investment, and as long as you do that during the 60 days, and then you apply for a new E2 visa based on a new investment, then you're okay. Or if you decide to give up and you don't want to invest in another business, you have 60 days to arrange your personal affairs and pack up and prepare for returning to your home country. Now, what about folks that you change the business model, you change it to a different business? The question is, can you keep your existing visa, or are you required to apply for a new visa, new E2 visa, to authorize the change in business model? That will come down to the extent of the change. If the new business model is still within the realm of the previous business, you just kind of shifted how you run the business, or you shifted some of the products or services, then you can conceivably still keep your existing E2 visa because the basic framework is still there, but you will change the business model to adjust for the new environment, new economic reality. But if the change in business model is drastic, let's say you have a commercial cleaning business and then you change it to something completely different, like a restaurant, for example. Well, that's such a big change that immigration, they're going to want you to reapply to get an approval for that drastic change. They want to approve that new business. But like I said, you're going to have up to 60-day grace period, depending on your current I-94 period of authorized stay. And that will give you that time to make that switch and then apply for the new E2 visa. Now I'm going to transition to the opportunities I see for E2 investors. I've been in this industry for 20 years. So, and I've been through this kind of challenge, not the same challenge, obviously. 10 years ago, it was more of an economic recession, but it was very drastic, and a lot of people were facing similar challenges. So, you know what? So many people are currently in a survival mode, in a protection mode, and frozen mode. And my goal is to help my clients, help my community thrive. So whatever opportunities I share that I recognize, I want to share with you, and hopefully it'll benefit you in any way, shape, or form. Now, the first great opportunity that I see is the potential for businesses sold at discounts, where you can conceivably find great value. A lot of businesses, American businesses, are forced to close during this time, and some of them will not be able to reopen because the owner are in financial distress and they don't have the ability to restart the business. Before COVID-19, businesses being sold at a discount, in my experience, usually involve business that has serious fundamental flaws. There's serious problems with the business, and that's why they're selling it at a discount. And that is not very good for E2 visa qualification. That's a big weak point. And however, in the current environment, you may have a lot of businesses that are fundamentally sound, but are being forced to sell or forced to close because of purely financial distress of the owner. And then you're going to be you're going to have great leverage to take advantage of that opportunity to negotiate a great deal. I've had clients who, and I'll just give you an example of my real life experience. I've had clients that purchased franchise restaurant that usually would cost $250,000 to invest and fully set up, that acquired the business for less than $50,000. And it was a profitable business, but the seller had to get out. Now, this was before COVID-19, but it was a similar situation in that the seller was facing personal distress. It was a health issue, and had to get out and was willing to let go of business because it was such a burden on him. He was willing to let go of it for less than $50,000, even though it would cost $250,000 to buy and set up a new business of the same type. So that's just an example of the great value that you could have. Now, I don't want you to take any risk with all the uncertainties right now. I certainly don't think it's a good idea to take great risk right now, but there's nothing that hurts from reaching out, communicating, doing research, looking for business opportunities, working with the franchise consultants, and setting yourself up to be ready to execute as soon as things stabilize. So start negotiating, start searching, start looking for opportunities. And the ones that presents itself, start engaging in conversation and negotiation so that you'll be well positioned to execute and purchase as soon as it is safe to travel and safe to proceed. The second great opportunities I see are with franchisors as well as sellers. Okay, with the franchisors right now are, from what I'm hearing and seeing, is that they are being very supportive to their franchisees. And most of them are being very supportive to franchisees and prospective franchisees. And so this is a great time to negotiate better terms, better royalties, better franchisee payment terms, more accommodation for E2 investors. I think there are going to be a lot more E2 friendly franchisors in the coming months, in the coming days. You know, in the past, you had only a selection of E2 friendly franchisors, meaning franchisors that were very accommodating to E2 investors and willing to agree to some of the special requests by E2 investors. And the really well-established franchise brands oftentimes will resist that because they have plenty of Americans that are buying their franchises. But what I anticipate that is in the coming months is that there's going to be a great reduction in demand from the domestic, from American buyers. And therefore, franchisor, in order to develop and grow their brand, they're going to have to expand their market. And here you come as the E2 investor, and you're going to be in a much better negotiating position, even with very strong established brands. In addition, if you're buying an existing business, I see great leverage on your part to negotiate purchase terms. And in the past, for E2 franchisors, E2 investors, your funding really has to come from your personal funds. There's very little opportunities to get financing here in the United States, mainly because most E2 investors don't have a strong credit history in the United States. Banks, sellers, and whatnot are not willing to extend financing, so you're limited to whatever money you have to invest. I think sellers, there's going to be a reduction in American buyers, so sellers are going to be much more motivated to accommodate E2 investors and be willing to possibly finance a portion of the purchase price. Now, you still have to contribute a majority of the purchase price with your personal funds, but you're allowed to finance a portion of it. And if the sellers are willing to finance a portion of the purchase price, then that will allow you to expand your investment budget. And that in turn will expand your business selection option as well to much greater selections. In addition to that, for those folks that will be starting up or buying retail businesses where you have to rent a physical business permits, you're going to be in a much better negotiating position with the landlords. In the past, landlords oftentimes give E2 investor a hard time because many E2 investors don't have U.S. credit history or don't have social security number. And in turn, the landlords will make very strict demands, like asking for triple, quadruple, or much more security deposit, much harsher terms, to kind of allay their concerns about the risk of renting to a foreign citizen with no credit history in the U.S. But in the current environment, a lot of landlords, they're losing tenants because tenants' businesses are shutting down, going out of business, and they're going to be more motivated to accommodate foreign citizen tenants. And so you're likely going to be able to get better terms in terms of not having to pay extra security deposit, or possibly getting better terms. And I see this as a great opportunity to start looking at locations. And for a lot of retail businesses, location is king. So, and in the past, a lot of, in my experience helping many hundred E2 investors, I've noticed that a lot of people have to settle on a location because they're just not able to secure a lease in the premium locations. Here comes your opportunity to go to the premium location, the best locations for your type of business, and negotiate with a motivated seller who will probably be more willing to rent to you, even though you don't have a very strong credit or any credit history in the United States. Another opportunity I see is the probability or possibility of more lenient visa officers in determining E2 visa applications. In the past, it is the E2 applicant's burden to satisfy US immigration that your business is worthy, that is strong enough, that it has great enough potential, that you're going to create all these jobs, and then they're judging whether your business is good enough. Well, the table has kind of turned here. US is, as of this week, has suffered 17 million job loss. The job loss now is greater than the Great Depression in the 1920s and 30s. This is unprecedented. And the US government is looking for any tool, any resource that will help boost the American economy, help save jobs. And President Trump has already expressed the investor visa program as a way to boost American jobs. In November 2019, the government drastically increased the EB-5 investment amount to from 1 million to 1.8 million, and basically pricing out a lot of foreign investors from the EB-5 program. Well, I've heard recently that the White House is considering the possibility of reducing the EB-5 investment amount to 450,000, a drastic reduction in investment amount, and also drastically increasing the EB-5 visa quota from 10,000 a year to 75,000 a year in order to jumpstart the US economy and jumpstart the jobs market. So, that's just a proposal right now that the White House is considering. But that intention it tells me that the US government is motivated to attract investor visas as a resource and tool to help the US economy. So the table has turned. And I think in the coming months, when you're going to the interview, your odds, you're going to likely face friendlier visa officers. And if you're already creating jobs, there's going to be much more appreciation and gratitude for your business. And I think the odds of getting visa approvals will be going to go higher in the coming days because the US, it has a great need for your contribution. So I think in the second half of 2020 will actually be a great time to apply for E2 visa. Once the US economy is fully recovered and we're back to the old days, then I think the attitudes are going to go back to the old days, which is show me what you got, then we'll decide whether your business is good enough before we approve the E2 visa. So this is one potential opportunity that we can capture. Now, the next opportunity that I see, and this is a very important one, is greater pool of talents. We all know that one of the key to success in business is bringing on board great talent, quality employees. Now, this has been a huge challenge in the past several years during the economic boom. The labor market has been extremely tight, and employees are they have a lot of options. If you're not paying enough or your benefits are not good enough, they got many other options to go to. Now, suddenly we have 17 million job loss in 1 month. This is unprecedented. And the job loss is probably going to get worse in the coming days. So being an entrepreneur, being an employer in this environment in the coming months is going to be a seller's market. You're likely going to have a plethora of talents to choose from. And that is going to be a huge advantage to starting up a business or growing a business, to be able to bring on the best talent, because you're going to have the leverage in this environment. So this is a great opportunity that I hope you take advantage of in the coming months. All right. So that concludes my portion of the presentation. I'm going to hand it over to my friend Daniel, and he'll talk to you about the franchisors and the ideal industries to get into in the coming months.
All right, Bobby, thank you very much for you covered a lot of ground here. I know there's some questions around E2V's application renewal, and we're gonna have a Q&A session at the end. So stay to the end. We're gonna have the chance to discuss your own questions here on the chat box. I would encourage you guys to type your questions. We're gonna try to cover as many as possible, but we can also address them offline after the webinar as well. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here. Can you see my screen, Bobby?
Yes, I can.
All right. So before I start, I hope everyone watching this webinar is doing well and staying healthy, taking care of their families. And the situation on the health crisis is still very fluid at this point. And first, I want to acknowledge that we have two components of the problem in front of us, right? So on one side, we have the health crisis. It's real, global reach, highly contagious organism that with the severity is unpredictable, ranging from people with no symptoms at all up to critical care and resulting in death. So stay safe. Health always comes first, and but we're going to talk about businesses, investment visa opportunities. I don't want to lose the focus that there is a human side of the crisis here that needs to be considered as well. Okay, so the economic fear is coming from instability in the market, right? So the forces are changing. Some industries are doing well. Other industries are suffering. A lot of the small business owners who were experiencing growth until a few months ago are now, their new goal is to break even for the next few months. So that's being driven by the stay-at-home policy, which is reducing consumer spending artificially. We can all agree this is temporary, and no one can predict when we're going to be in the next phase, when the crisis is going to be completely resolved and under control. But we know that everyone is working towards that goal. So it's going to happen sooner or later. And what I'd like to invite you guys to be strategic, plan ahead, take the time right now to learn everything you can, and do all the preparation work ahead of time, such as forming your legal entity in the United States, studying the diverse markets of your interest, different business models, get informed, try to see the big picture here. Bobby touched on a few opportunities. Real estate, it will become more available. There will be more second generation locations. So for example, a restaurant that may have closed business, a new investor may come in and lease a ready to go facility with minimum leasehold improvements, and that can be a great opportunity. Landlords are definitely more flexible, allowing grace periods for the rent, allowing tenant improvement allowances that can offset some of your leasehold improvement costs. Contractors and labor has become more available as well. we can think, especially in fragmented industries, you may face reduction in competition, for example, right? So the mom and pop shops who are not well structured, unfortunately, they're going to go out of business, but that can create an opportunity for a newcomer. And we have already seen, through the conversations with franchisors, that suppliers are adjusting their prices to become more competitive, to stay afloat as well. So overall, the scenario regarding opportunities for new investors in the near future, we should expect to see a little bit of reduction in operating expenses in general because of those variables I just covered. So how franchisors are supporting both existing franchisees and prospective investors. So I have talked to several franchisees and franchisors the past weeks, and what I learned from them is we've seen across the board, all hands on deck. So franchisors have diverted from side projects to help protect the unit economics, and they're doing that by various means. For example, waiving royalties, waiving advertisement funds, helping the franchisee negotiate relief term with their landlords in their particular locations. They have also increased advertisement spending on franchisors' dime as well, so the brand can be well positioned for a jump start when the economy starts to warm up. I've seen several franchisors adding complementary services that are in high demand. So a good example is the tutoring industry that operates with tutoring centers. So typically the students will come to the center for the tutoring sessions. They've been adding a lot of distance learning technology to continue to serve those families who are stuck at home during these uncertain times. Another thing that is really good about the franchising industry is that there is an association called International Franchise Association, very well run, and they fight to protect industry's interests in Washington. So having that big brother helping you as a franchisee is a great advantage. So for prospective investors, I've seen a lot of shift from discovery days that used to be done with the prospect franchisee flying to the location where the franchisor has its headquarters. It's now going virtual. That is an opportunity. You're gonna get the same result of meeting all the executives and learning about the infrastructure that the franchisor has to offer new franchisees, but without having to travel to the United States, for example. That used to be mandatory. Now most of them are shifting into virtual discovery days. That's great. Saves you one trip to the United States when you're learning about a new franchise opportunity. They are offering incentives like expanded territories, reduction in royalties, sometimes even for the entire duration of the new franchise agreement. That can be like 10 years. That could result in significant savings, in a 10 years period. A lot of them are giving discounts and special conditions for multi-units. So if you close like 2 or 3 territories, you may be able to defer the development of second and third territories, preserving your cash right now. That's a great add-on. So they've been very flexible in general. And of course, I'm talking about the E2 visa friendly franchisors here, allowing the franchise fee to be paid sometimes in 2 or 3 installments, or adding time to start the operation. What happens in a lot of cases is the foreign exchange rate in some of the countries has gone out of whack. It's very, very volatile right now. Dollar has become more expensive for a lot of international investors. So by allowing that flexibility in terms of time to start operation, gives time to the market to calm down a little bit, and the foreign exchange rates go back to a healthy level. Some franchisors are offering in-house financing, especially for equipment packages. Some franchisors are even going beyond and being the co-signers of the first service vehicle that the franchisee would have to invest in anyways. Those are all great opportunities. All hands on deck. You know, franchisors are sharing the pain with the franchisees during this moment, and offering a lot of incentives for new investors. I'd like to talk a little bit about recession-resistant industries. Some of them are there's a new term in the franchising industry. It's called pandemic resistant. Let's stick with recession-resistant for now. And so disaster restoration, auto repair, those are typically backed up by the insurance industry. So no matter what the economic condition is, if someone has a flood in their house, you know, they will execute the policy. Those businesses are doing okay during the coronavirus crisis, during this moment of instability. Same thing with senior cares, especially in-home senior care. We know that senior care facilities can be very dangerous in these times of coronavirus, especially because they become a group of risk for this type of pandemic. So families who can afford, you know, private care in-home, they are doing so. This industry was booming and now has not lost its momentum. Pets are considered family in the United States as well. They need care, they need food, they need grooming, attention. So pet owners continue to spend in pet care and pet products. Cleaning, this is a big bucket, right? So even though residential cleaning has seen a reduction in the frequency, the franchisees are still able to book services. It's somewhat resilient. On the commercial side and specialty cleaning, things are going really well. A lot of those companies are adding services that go beyond the regular cleaning. They are more on the decontamination side. Big shout out for external services here. So like pool cleaning, for example, that industry is doing really well. Most families are stuck at home. If they have a pool, the pool needs to be maintained. Guess what? The technician doesn't go inside the house. Typically access the pool using a service gate, and that industry is actually seeing increase in revenue during these times. Home services in general, again, the ones that operate outside the residence are doing really well. And I'm gonna add here like landscaping services, HVAC services. People are staying home. They need their air conditioning heater systems to be working properly to maintain comfort. They are contracting this type of service right now. A lot of home improvement, especially the ones on the outer part of the property, are going really well. Of course, if you have an appliance that is damaged, or you need a plumber, you know, those are essential services that will thrive during the recession no matter what. Property management has been proven during economic downturns in the past, especially 10 years ago when that industry segment was hit really hard, because property managers, they deal with both property owners and tenants. So in economic downturns, people tend to sell their properties, be more cash liquid and live in a rented property. So they operate both sides of the equation. They typically do well. Security and surveillance. So these are typically B2B businesses, okay? So commercial clients who now have their inventories or expensive productive assets in a warehouse or in a retail setting, and they need to be monitored. So they're going after security and surveillance companies to install that camera system, access control, distance monitoring and recording, all that great technology to serve their businesses. Marketing does really well during economic downturns. Can you imagine the amount of money that the companies had budgeted for conferences, road shows, that are not going to be deployed because all those gatherings have been canceled due to the COVID crisis? They will need to deploy that somewhere else. Digital marketing, of course, is prone to do really well during these difficult times. There are some consulting-based companies that all they do is expense reduction. Again, they go really well during economic downturns. So the takeaway here: anything backed by insurance, product or service that is needed, not a luxury, and anything that you cannot do so easily by yourself, those are indicatives of a recession-resistant industry. Some industry here have latent demands. So tutoring, we talked about this. We are now homeschooling our kids while trying to work from home. So it's natural to think that they will need an extra help from tutors to catch up with the curriculum from the schools. Hair salon, beauty, fitness, they have latent demand right now. They will see some recovery as well as soon as the government can tone down the social distancing policies. Staffing, Bobby mentioned before that we are coming from a scenario of full employment. Now they have, unfortunately, a lot of new job seekers in the market that they can help place. So that's an industry you could consider for fast recovery after the health crisis is under control. How we can help you at Franchise Wizards, we do what we call business matchmaking. We work with the prospective investors to understand the goals, to draft a business profile, an ideal business profile that has the qualities that this investor is looking for. We prepare a tailored franchise selection for that business profile and present those businesses to investor and conduct discovery processes with the franchisor. So the prospective investor can learn everything that is needed in order to make an informed investment decision. I would like to invite you guys to take the time and learn, plan ahead. Our services are free of charge. We are paid by the franchisors. We work with over 530 franchisors across multiple industry categories with a huge diversity of business models and various levels of initial investment. There are no contracts, no obligation to invest. In essence, there's no risk to you. And it's going to be our pleasure to assist you in gaining knowledge about franchising and investment vehicles that can be good for you. So you can prepare ahead, wait for the right signals from the market, and jumpstart the economy reboot that we're going to have in the near future. I'd like to Thank you all. I will make available here on the right side of your screen an E2 visa guide that Bobby and myself and Shayla, my wife and business partner, have put together. And feel free to download it. There is a lot of great information in there. And I'd like to open for questions and answers right now. Bobby, are you back on?
I am back on. Thank you so much, Daniel. That was an awesome presentation. So much value, so much great insight. We've been taking a lot of questions during both of our presentations, and there seems to be a very popular question that I didn't fully address in my portion, which is the U.S. immigration, the USCIS processing cases, can I apply for E2 visa in the United States? Can I apply for extension of my status or change in my visa status here in the United States? I think this confusion is primarily coming from the fact that U.S. immigration have closed many of their offices, and the closure is primarily targeted towards cases that require in-person interviews, and the cases that require interview are suspended until the interview scheduling and interview process resumes. However, for any kind of visa cases here in the United States that don't require an interview, that process, at least in my experience, is continuing. That means that if you're here, you'll be able to apply for an E2 change of status or E2 extension of status right now with U.S. immigration. You may submit it. If you're here on B1, B2 visa status, you can apply for extension if you need more time with justifiable reasons, and you can apply for a change to E2 visa status. U.S. immigration is still taking on those cases at the present time. Now, they have canceled what they call premium processing. That's their expedited visa option, where you pay an extra $1,400, approximately $1,440, and get a faster answer. They've temporarily suspended that option because they're probably on short staff. They probably have very limited resources. So the only option now is for everybody to apply under regular processing. And immigration, they'll take several months to make a decision on most applications under regular processing. But the good thing is, as long as you timely apply for a change of status or extension of status to whether E2 or B1 extension or whichever visa that you're going for, as long as you file it timely before your current status expires, normally you'll be legally allowed to stay here in the United States while you're waiting for the decision. There are exceptions where if you're here on a tourist visa and you're trying to switch to an F1 student, that's a little bit of an exception scenario where you have to apply for what they call a bridge gap. Talk to me about that if you're in that unique scenario. But by and large, as long as you file the change and extension application before your current status expires, then you should be in good shape. You should be allowed to stay here and wait. One of our attendees asked, if they were to apply, let's say, for an extension of B1 business visitor status to complete the investment, and while the B1 extension application is pending, can they go ahead and apply for an E2 visa? You would be able to apply for an E2 visa with the U.S. embassies abroad. Like, remember what I said earlier, the embassies are currently suspended for most types of visa processing, but they're still accepting the application. So you can still submit the E2 visa application with the U.S. embassies, even if you have a pending B1 extension in the United States. Now, on the other hand, if your intention is to apply for a change of status to E2 here in the United States, you got to wait for your extension application to be approved. So you wouldn't be able to apply for a change of status to E2 in the United States if your current status has already expired and your legal basis for being here is based on having a pending extension application. Okay, so hopefully I've answered that question. I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios and a lot more complex details. So if you have a unique circumstance, feel free to reach out to me by email or by telephone, and we can delve into your unique situation on an individual level.
Bobby, I'm broadcasting here a question from Kyle. He's in a very unique situation where he has applied for the visa. He has made the investment, has applied for the visa, and the embassy is closed before he had the chance to be interviewed.
That's right.
Yeah. So what happens? Sit and wait, or is there any fast track or any way to expedite this?
I hear you. And I know Kyle very well. So here's the situation with the U.S. embassies. Okay, as I've said before, they suspended routine visa processing. They're only granting visas for emergency situations, and that doesn't really apply to most E2 visa situations. We're talking about like people who have emergency medical treatment that they need to get from the United States and they can't get it in their country, and getting an emergency visa in that scenario, or diplomatic visas. So for most E2 investors, the urgency is likely not going to be compelling enough to get their visas issued during the coronavirus shutdown. Now, so the embassies, they haven't been very transparent in what they're doing on the back end. They just announced that visa services for routine cases have been suspended.
Mm-hmm.
But on the back end, my thinking is that it's more on a embassy to embassy basis. And a lot of embassies, they're not really processing the E2 visas, depending on where you are. If you're pre-interview and you submitted documents, some embassy might be starting to look at your documents on the back end. We don't know that for sure because we don't know what they're doing on the back end. They're not telling anybody. But I'll tell you this, like a lot of the cases I'm submitting during the coronavirus pandemic, they're taking the applications, but I'm not getting any human response. So that tells me that they're either not looking at it, or they're not initiating any communication during this period. Now, when you're in a situation where, let's say you've already passed the interview and you're just waiting for your visa, that's the holdup. You know, they're not allowed to issue visas. Not only are the embassies have they suspended routine visa processing, there's currently a U.S. Governmental order to suspend visa issuance until coronavirus comes under control. So even for folks who have passed interview and basically their visas are approved, the embassies are hand-tied from issuing that visa until headquarters authorizes them to do so. So that's a fluid situation. We just got to continue to monitor. What I recommend is that you identify the U.S. Embassy webpage that announces news on the coronavirus situation and their operational status for that embassy, and just check back periodically. And then as soon as they indicate, give some kind of indication of when they're going to resume, start opening up, start processing, that's when you can start reaching out.
Thank you, Bobby. And Kyle, I know that your investment is through a franchising, franchise. Reach out to the franchisor to document an extension in the period to start the commencement date of your operation. Same thing with landlord, if possible, if you have already rented a space. So everyone is being very flexible during these uncertain times that we're living in. So make sure you keep the communication going with everyone to keep your cost as low as possible. So Santiago was asking if we're gonna be recording this webinar. Yes, and we're gonna make a replay link available for everyone who attended. So other questions here. Shayla is asking about, and you covered that, if there is some inclination of the immigration officers looking at the case to be more lenient and approve more new investments to the United States. And it's a speculation right now, but I mean, it's very well aligned with the goals of the U.S. government in terms of warming up the economy. Farouk here, extension of the visa, you should contact Bobby Chung's office and discuss the details there. Let me see here, Roberto Tavares. Yeah, so the question is, what we expect after the crisis is over, right? So we covered that during the presentation. I'm gonna give some highlights here. Thank you for your question. So it's difficult to time when the crisis, the health crisis, is gonna be over, right? We see improvements every day on the news, and we know that there's a lot of development of new drugs, vaccines, and everything going on as we speak. I think the first sign is whenever we see the trend in new cases and the death toll significant being under control. That is the first milestone that the investor should look at, right? For someone investing right now and in the phase that I know you guys are, dip into the discovery process, know that franchisors are very flexible at this time, to help you maybe secure territory, to start at a later date, or create a special payment condition to allow you to have a more favorable dollar exchange rate if you're coming from a country that is suffering with the dollar volatility. And just to complement this, some of the changes are, in my opinion, are going to become permanent, right? So I give an example of a tutoring center that have added distance learning. I don't think that capability is going to go away after the crisis is over. I think it's going to be an added benefit, for example. Another example in that same note is, for example, disaster restoration companies who deal with mold, for example, right? So they are adding new decontamination services to their portfolio of services that they can offer to a prospective client. So I don't think that's going to be dialed back anytime soon. So there's a specific question here about that. This is from Michelle Baitelli. I'd like to broadcast this. If I'm on E2 visa and receive a work proposal, can I accept and change its status?
Yes. Normally you would be able to. And of course, devil's in the details, and had to come up with evaluate the specific situation. But absolutely, you're on E2 visa and you got a job offer and the company's willing to sponsor you for employment immigration or work visa. That's definitely a possibility. But we need to have a private conversation about that to make sure that all the T's are crossed and I's dotted to make sure smooth transition. And U.S. immigration, at least at the present time, they're still processing applications that do not require interview.
All right, so I have another question here. This one is from Ahmed, and the question is, I'm an E2 spouse. Can I do sponsoring visa? If yes, should I do it before applying for the work permit, or should I work there first? Do you understand the basis for this question, Bobby?
I think I do. I think I can read between the lines. So E2 spouse, as many of you may be aware, are eligible to get a spousal working permit that allows you to work anywhere for any employer in the United States. And the employer can potentially sponsor the E2 spouse for employment immigration. So if the employer is directly willing to sponsor you for employment immigration, they can potentially do that. But I normally recommend that you get an E2 spousal working permit first, because just in case the employment immigration case is not successful, you'll still have the E2 spousal working permit to fall back on. If you don't have an E2 spousal working permit, you go straight for employment immigration, and that process fails, then you're going to be in an unauthorized employment, probably out of status situation, which is something you want to completely avoid.
Great, thank you. So I have another, Federica Magni had asked a question that has already been answered, so I'm going to skip that one. Syed Ali has a business in his home country, and he's looking for the possibility of bringing that business to the United States or opening a branch office here in the United States, and he's asking if it can qualify him to the E2 visa. So it depends on the qualities of the business. He has a secondary question that has only franchise will qualify for E2 visa. Absolutely not. You can have an independent business. Doesn't need to be a franchise business. Franchise businesses have significant advantages for someone new in the country, right? So you are operating kind of a proven business model, has training and support offered by the franchisor. You are tapping into something that has, processes, systems, marketing programs in place, and especially data. There is a ton of data that is made available by the franchisor to you. For example, on the franchise disclosure document, which is a federally regulated document, they must disclose to you prior to offering you a franchise agreement. And there's a lot of great quantitative information there about, for example, revenue performance or initial investment or operating costs that you can use to make your business plan that's going to be part of your E2 visa application credible. So when immigration officers see this is a franchise business, they know they can look into the FDD to have their questions answered. Is the initial investment enough? They're going to go to item 7 and figure out if you are within the ranges. Same thing, is this revenue projection too aggressive? They're going to go on item 19 and see where it falls within those ranges, and that gives credibility to your business plan. Great question. So there's a question here from Till Schmidt. I will broadcast here. I don't think it went. So he's asking about, if he needs more time to open the business, and we use that time to do some trial runs in product. Can the expenses that he's going to incur during that period count towards the initial investment?
And the simple answer is still yes. So any business expenditure made for business development, R&D, anything that can be substantially tied to your business development, product development, business startup, could potentially count towards your E2 investment. You got to make sure that all the money are coming from qualifying sources. The fund transfer, fund trail evidence are all strongly documented in a qualifying way. And U.S. immigration, they understand that a lot of businesses prior to formally creating the business entity might incur a lot of expenses, such as product development or R&D. And in my experience, they've always counted that towards E2 investment because that's part of the whole investment endeavor. So the simple answer is yes.
So Muhammad Ismail is asking about, let me broadcast this one here. Daniel mentioned about the waiving in discounts by franchisors or sellers. That discount is definitely decrease the overall investment. Will that be acceptable for E2 visa approval since there is a minimum amount required? Great question. So let me rephrase what I said. So if they are, for example, giving you discount on royalties. Royalties is an operating expense. It's not necessarily part of your initial investment, so you're not getting any discount on initial investment. So if you are, for example, investing in multi-unit franchises, right? So you're buying 2 territories, 3 territories, and the franchisor will offer you a progressive discount on the franchise fee. Actually, the three territories, even with discounted franchise fee, will likely show a greater number than one single territory that was the baseline for your investment. So it will not decrease your initial investment, but will create more opportunities for expansion at a lower entry cost. Great question. So, Bobby, do you want to take another question here? So someone is asking, things that are not related to the current situation. They're more generic questions, such as Amazon logistics service business. Can it be suitable for E2?
Yeah, certainly. So please understand that E2 visa does not limit the industries that can qualify. It is potentially qualifying for just about any business model. The key to be cognizant of is that E2 visa expects the business to create multiple meaningful jobs for American workers. It expects a business that will generate substantial revenues, sells a product or service, and capable of making enough profits or income for the owner to provide you with a comfortable living in the United States. So keep those principles in mind. This particular industries, there are a lot of business types that, depending on the size and scale of the business, will affect E2 visa qualification. So the same type of business, if it's operating on a very, very small scale, let's say it's Amazon logistics service, and you have 1 truck and you're delivering the packages yourself, that's not going to qualify. It's too small. It's called marginal. So a bigger scale than that could qualify. So simple answer is yes, it could potentially qualify, but it depends on the size and scale.
Yes, and let me add something here regarding overall risk management strategy. Be careful with businesses where you have only 1 client, right? Or you are putting all your eggs into 1 basket, right? You want to have diversity of clients. So look into this business opportunity with the angle of risk management as well. All right, so let me see here, Bobby, Leon. While we are maintaining our current E2 visa status, so I'm going to broadcast this one here. Mm-hmm. Hi, Bobby, this is Leon, your client from California. While we are maintaining our current E2 status, can we register or buy another company and just run it on the side, right? Or we have to go through the E2 visa process again? Great question.
Yes, that's a great question. So normally you need to have U.S. immigration authorization to run the particular business, okay? And so that's the technical requirement. However, in my years of experience, the way immigration officials have handled this particular situation is that so long as you are continuously running and operating the original business, and then you've expanded your investment into a second company, additional investments, in my experience at least, is immigration officials had been okay with allowing you to do that and allowing you to explain, update them on additional business when you renew the visa, so long as you continuously operated the original business according to business plan. If you got rid of the original business, shut it down or sold it, and you just you're focusing on the new business, then absolutely you're going to need to reapply for the E2 visa. But if the first business is continuously operating, then in generally speaking, it's okay for you to expand into additional investment and then present that at the time of visa renewal. But that's a very individualized situation. So Leon, I encourage you to have a phone call with me at the very least to iron out the details so I can analyze your unique situation and give you very specific advice on how to handle that situation.
Great. Another question here is more generic. Mm-hmm. So the question is, holding an E2 visa, investing in a business and working a second job in a different industry. Is there any restriction?
All right, this is a good question. So please understand that E2 investor visa for the main applicant investor limits you to managing, working, and operating the E2 business only. U.S. immigration doesn't want you distracted in taking on other employment endeavors. So E2 visa doesn't allow you to take on a side job or get it or take on other endeavors. They want you to focus on the E2 business. However, as you may know, E2 spouse is eligible to get a spousal working permit that allows a spouse to work in any job, help out in the E2 business, start his or her own separate business, or get a job. So if your intention is to have the employment freedom and flexibility while you're in the U.S. and look for other opportunities, then it'd be ideal. And if assuming you're married, that the strategy that would be appropriate for you would be to flip it and have your spouse apply as an E2 investor, which will restrict him or her to do the E2 business only, and then you'd be eligible for the spousal working permit that would allow you to get into the other areas, other employment opportunities that you seek. Okay.
That's a great strategy, great risk mitigation strategy when we have both spouses with qualifying citizenship, right? So to put the applicant as the least employable of the two in the United States, that person is going to run the business. The spouse will get a work permit, go work for any employer in the United States, and this way you have your household with two completely separate streams of income. That's a great risk mitigation strategy. So I'll take two more questions here, and we're gonna wrap up. So as someone completely new to applying to the E2 visa, let me broadcast this here. How likely is the US to renew visas after 2 years? Is it common to get a renewal? Thank you. You talked about this during your presentation. Mm-hmm. As long as the business is in good standing, there's no reason why someone wouldn't renew a visa, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if your business is doing well, you're creating jobs, you're paying taxes, you're contributing to the economy, why would the US government want to shut you down? That would be hurting the US economy. So at least in my experience, we have very high success rate with E2 extension, E2 renewals. Where people run into trouble is where the business has declined significantly or the business drastically changed, and where immigration feel like the business is operating at a too marginal level. And that's where the trouble appears. But with proper planning, you can avoid those risks. At least for my clients, I always advise clients to reach out to me about half a year or a year before their visa expires, so I can evaluate the performance and advise whether any changes or improvements are necessary, so we're not going to have a problem with the renewal. With proper planning, the renewal process should be successful in great majority of the time.
All right, thank you. One last question here. This one is from Muhammad Ismail. Is there any revision in minimum investment required for the E2 immigration? So it's already pretty loosely defined as substantial, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's no need to change that.
There is no minimum requirement under the law. It just says it's very, like Daniel stated, it is very loosely defined as substantial investment. What I'll say is this: prior to COVID-19, for investments lower than 100,000, those investments are subjected to great scrutiny and have higher risk of visa denial for being too little investment. But I believe if the business model is sound and you're investing in a well-established brand, like a franchise brand, and the investment amount is sub 100,000, I think the greater motivation of the U.S. government to boost the economy, to recover from all the millions of job losses, I think they'll be more lenient. That's my prediction. So it will have an impact on lower investment allowance from this point of view.
Great question, great answer. Let me add something here. Ultra low cost franchises, you know, the ones under $85,000. The vast majority of the cases, they are business models designed to be owner operated. They are not so robust in terms of hiring employees at early stages of the business. That's something that puts pressure on the initial investment to be around or above $100,000, where you're going to find executive models where the franchisee retains administrative functions, sometimes sales functions, but has the ability to hire employees at a short term, either from the beginning or at the near future. And that's a very desirable condition for an E2 visa, strong E2 visa case. Great question. Bobby, I think we covered all of the questions here. I think we are ready to wrap up. Thank you very much for all of you who attended today. I hope you guys are staying safe. Take the time to learn. You can contact me, contact Bobby if you're looking for your next investment. Get educated about the franchising industry. Franchises offer excellent investment vehicles for E2 visa investors. And Bobby and I, we have collaborated in many cases in the past. We worked in coordination to get people approved and in a business that they love and that is going to make the best use of their skill set. Bobby, do you want to wrap up this? Do you have any final comments?
I'm so grateful for all of your attendance. Thank you so much for being here. Please take care of yourselves during the pandemic and stay safe, stay healthy. We're here to serve you. I do see that we weren't able to answer every single question, and I want to answer them for you. So feel free to reach out to me privately, and I'll do my best to address your concerns. Until next time, take care, everybody, and look forward to helping you down the road.
All right. Bye-bye now.